Hey there, this is Pam Perry, and we are in for a show today talking about press. Two PR pros talking about how to get press and what that all means. And so we have Mickie Kennedy coming up right after this.
Welcome to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast. Join Pam Perry, veteran PR strategist, Emmy award-winning producer and publisher of Speakers Magazine, who will show you how to crack the code in getting out there to get known. Each week, she either interviews her media friends, PR colleagues, or she just goes solo, offering you strategies on publicity, publishing, and platform building. So listen up to hear how to get booked on media places and on superstar stages. Now, here's your host, Pam Perry.
Hey there, hey there. Hey, Mickie, thanks for joining us today. So you are been at this for a while. So I want you to tell people a little bit about who you are and why I'm so excited to have you, because eReleases is one of the first, if I would say, pioneering SEO press release services that I found out about many years ago. I want to say at least 2 decades ago. All right, but you kind of give me a little bit of the background.
Sure. So I started eReleases in October of 1998. So it'll be
So it was.
27 years very soon.
Yeah.
And we originally started emailing press releases to journalists because I had worked for another company and we did faxing, and he spent a whole day programming a fax machine with numbers and hitting send. And all of a sudden, people started calling in the 90s saying, hey, could you email next time rather than fax? And I was like, oh, my God, so much easier. And so I started to build a Rolodex of journalists. And I spent about a year doing that, and then launched in October of 1998 and had a few thousand journalists that I had connections with and had reached out to. And that's where I started. Now, the business transitioned over the years. PR Newswire, which is the oldest and largest newswire press releases, reached out to us, wanted to learn a little bit more about what we were doing, and wanted to find a way to work together. And I really tried to convince them to give us a U.S. national distribution, pointing out that, my clients, which are small businesses, startups, speakers, authors, entrepreneurs, are not the people that their salespeople are ever going to convert to a $1,700 US one national distribution.
Right.
And surprisingly, they said, let's give it a try. We can always, either one of us can stop the contract. And it's been going like 15 years now. And we do about 10,000 press releases a year with PR Newswire. And we still support them. And if a big giant company or publicly traded company comes, I pass them back along to PR Newswire. And surprisingly, they do the same with us. If they have someone calling and they're just looking for someone to write a release and all these things that they don't provide, they'll send them over to us. So it's been a very good partnership, and they've been very supportive of helping entrepreneurs and small businesses. And I've had lots of startups graduate and go to work directly with PR Newswire, with their PR professionals as well. So it's been a very good partnership, and I couldn't be happier to provide that value to customers, because a US one national distribution is expensive, and here we've made it affordable by offering just that through eReleases.
I like that. And you really did it organically. You did in the fax blast, moving to email, creating the media contacts, putting them all in order. And then even PR Newswire has had a whole lot of different reiterations as well. They, they're working with Cision. And I remember Haro was a part of them. Mickie, is Haro still part of PR Newswire?
Well, Haro changed names, and then they folded it. They stopped it last year.
Okay.
And the problem with Haro is it was a beautiful thing for a period of time, but it's not scalable, because the biggest complaint journalists had is, I got 1,400 people reply. That's too many to go through. Ooh. And so it became too competitive because all of a sudden you're competing against so many people, and journalists were just being swamped. And I know that they switched out the email addresses and things like that with the sort of a same thing that we do. We do a spam protection where it forwards it, but you can cut it off and stop the madness and stuff like that. But unfortunately, they just decided that the product had reached its end. But I still see people using that concept. I belong to EO Baltimore, which is Entrepreneurs Organization, the Baltimore chapter. And EO has got its own little HARO in place where they offer all the thousands of entrepreneurs that EO has as potential people for journalists. And journalists do come through and trickle through, and it goes to the right people. Like, is there anybody in hospitality who can speak about the pandemic and the hiring issues and stuff like that? And so I still see the spirit of HARO in places, but it is one of those things that a national organization buying and scaling, it begins to fall apart, and that's a shame.
There was another one that I think it's called Vetify. Vetify is one where it's scalable, where they vet, so to speak, the experts, and then the experts are on this particular site where the reporters can then subscribe, but the people aren't reaching out to the reporters or the journalists or the producers directly, but they've been vetted by the service, so you can only get on there. So so the whole point of it is really get impressed. So that's the whole point. So why do we go through all these reiterations? And we want to know that the press release is never going to go away. That is what I call the love language of the journalist. That's how they want it. So if I call on and say, hey, me and Mickie, we doing this great thing, this and that, and it's like, okay, well, send me a press release. They don't want a one page. They want it in the format that they want it, which is a press release. And that's what eReleases.com has really become, where people can actually, okay, I'm going to take my press release, I'm going to put on eRelease. Now, one of the things you said is you help people write them as well. How has that changed in the world of AI?
So we used to just offer a writing service, but now we provide a lot of templates. We provide a lot of education, and recognize that, most people can write a press release, and if not, they can lean on AI a little bit. But I always tell people AI has been trained on the world of press releases, and 97% of them don't generate earned media. So don't trust AI to come up with your concept. Go to it knowing exactly what you want to write about, and then lean on it. I find the best product is tell me how to structure a press release on this topic. This is a little bit about my company, and it gives you the structure. And then say, okay, give me 5 headline options for this. Then let's work on the first paragraph. And it takes longer than just say write a 500-word press release on this, but you will end up with better results. You can actually say, hey, I really want this thing in my first paragraph, and you can easily fix it as you go, and you'll end up with a better product. And I always tell people the hidden Trojan horse of press releases is the quote. Because if a journalist is looking at 2 press releases of equal newsworthiness and one has an amazing quote, they know that they can write an article and that quote's going to make it sing. But if they have a mediocre quote, they can write the best of articles and either choose to paraphrase what that person said or include a quote that sort of falls flat. And so the quote is a place where I think that it can really save someone who has sort of like a press release that maybe isn't that newsworthy. And people always go, well, what makes an amazing quote? And of course, you could be a wordsmith and say something beautiful, but more times than not, it means saying something with conviction, active verbs, very strongly. You've condensed it and said it as powerfully as can be done, that if a journalist was to paraphrase it, there'd be a loss. You would ache for how it was said before, because it was just perfect before. And that you can accomplish. And often it takes a little bit of work. And again, it's an area where AI may not be the best for it. You may have to go in there and polish it and put that human element in it to get that, voice and tone and strength that a good quote requires.
So that people will know, we're talking with Mickie Kennedy from eReleases. We're talking about getting press. First step 1 is defining what is news, what is press, what do they want. I was taught in journalism as to who, what, when, where, why, and how. But adding that quote, I don't think, maybe Mickie, maybe I'm telling some secrets, but the quote can be something that your client said, or you made that quote for your client and you gave it to them so that
Right.
you can put it in the press release. And I didn't really realize that until I was in journalism school and we were writing press releases, and they said, well, just put a quote in there. I'm like, just make one up. It says, yeah, because then it'll be approved. I was like, oh, that's how they do it. So you go to the CEO, you write the quote, and then they approve it. And they say,
Right.
yeah, I was like, oh, okay. So a lot of times that is the power of it, because then you have to know this, the CEO, whoever you're quoting in the press release, in order to write it and then make it with conviction, like you said. But the headline and the lead are probably the most important part. And I think you've been doing this for over a couple of decades. I've been doing over a couple of decades. We see headlines in our sleep.
Right.
So to you, because the world is such attention deficit, I guess you would say, we've got to catch somebody in the first. It used to be 30 seconds. I guess it's now 3 seconds. What really makes a good press release subject line for the email or for the headline on the press release? And what are the, I guess you say, the recipe? Do
Right.
we always want to, this is the second question, do we always want to lean into SEO, or do we want to lean into the human element? So
I think the human element still perseveres. I also think that, again, I think that headlines that aren't snappy or puns work better. I have a lot of people, I think, who feel like they went to school to write headlines by the New York Post, which has the most great consumer headlines. They're full of puns and they're clever and there's brilliance there, but there's no context. And the one thing a journalist hates is seeing a headline that they don't know. Are you in my industry? What is this exactly about? The who, what, when, where, how, and why, all of that not being addressed at all in the headlines, just being very playful, and I find that those don't work at all. We've tested them in the past and they just don't. And, at the end of the day, my client pays the bill. So if they want to overrule me, I will do that. But I tell you, I haven't found many exceptions when it comes to that rule. A boring but strong headline always works better than one that's written for consumers. The journalist and their editors and their team will write the headline for the consumers. You don't have to worry about that. They just want to be able to quickly browse and say, this is relevant to my industry, and I understand what the topic is, so that I click through to read the email or click through to see the press release on the wire, and that's it. And I tell people that. It can be longish, but you don't want it to be too long. And I also think that I see a lot of subheads, and I just don't see subheads weighing too much into that equation, because it's not going to appear in the email subject. It's also not going to appear in the streaming headlines on the wire. So, I don't have a problem with the subhead, but I don't think that they lend very much to the actual article or the actual press release. So the main headline's definitely the most important.
Yeah. And because I said that about SEO, it's like a lot of times they'll want to put their name in the headline. Okay, whoever the client is, instead of what it's about. Because to the journalist or the news organization, they may not know the client, but they'll know the subject. And so that's what they're looking for. And I like when you said, don't necessarily write that headline for the consumer. The journalist will write it for their audience. You just write it for the journalist. And that's why I said it's a love language for the journalist, not necessarily for the general public. Now, people will write press releases, and there's a lot of press release services out there, and people are writing them left and right, but they're doing it because they want to be able to have what they call SEO. So they want backlinks or that sort of thing. What's your thought about the proliferation of these, I'm going to say email farms, but those that are trying to just get a whole bunch of people to have backlinks?
So my thing is, you can't game Google. You can't
Yeah.
game the system. Don't try. I think that the best content is natural content.
Mhm.
But that being said, I don't think there's anything wrong going through your copy and making sure that keywords were
Yeah,
included.
that's
I
fine.
am guilty of writing articles about press releases and not having the word press release in it, but just say release or PR or some shorthand that I'm
Yeah,
used to.
I
And
use
I'm like,
PR.
no, it's probably important to put the word press in front of press release rather than the shorthand of just calling it a release throughout the article. And so, that kind of looking at it, I think, is good. I think also looking to make sure that, these keywords are natural. And, I think as long as you follow that, you'll never get in trouble with Google. You won't find all of a sudden Google recalculates and all of a sudden you drop from page 1 to page 50, with that kind of approach. And I think that that's probably, the biggest thing. Hacks are the type of things that are temporary, and you often find the value just disappears, and then
Mhm,
everything you've done is no longer an asset. And yet
mhm.
I've been, have a blog that I've been doing for, I think, close to 20 years, and it gets like, as much as 30,000 visitors a month, and it's an asset. But if I was using keyword stuffing and all this unnatural
They
stuff,
would've they
it would
would've
have probably quit, years
mhm,
ago, providing any benefit and any audience. And so
mhm.
I think
Yeah.
that just with press releases, it's the same approach.
Yeah, the human element is always the main thing. We're talking with Mickie Kennedy, eReleases.com. He's the founder, CEO of that. That's been around over 25 years. Yeah, over 25 years, 27, 27 years or so. And not looking like you're even 27. So that's just pretty amazing right there. But just built a company on that and helping people get media. Why is it that people need media? Because you started releases before social media became a big thing.
Right.
Now it's like people just think when you say media, they think immediately social media, but really it's really the media, the press. We're talking about radio, TV, print, newspapers, magazines, all of those things, and even newsletters in a way, depending on how big it is, and online news outlets as well. So, what is the main reason why an entrepreneur, speaker, author, well, obviously author, they want to sell books, but why is it that they need to rely more on press than just say Instagram? Well, I got a Facebook, I got Instagram. Why is that? So, kind of give us a big overall because
I
we've been
think
doing it
that,
for a while. So,
right. When a journalist writes about you, it's almost like third-party corroboration. This is social proof. It's almost like an implied endorsement.
yeah.
It's instant credibility. And there are people who have their favorite journalist, and they follow them, like in the Wall Street Journal, the tech guy, and when he covers a new product or service or startup, people pay attention, and
Mhm,
what he says, people value. And
mhm,
you can't get that anywhere else. I've had people who got articles and said, look, we got 400 visitors from this article, and it looks like 240 of them purchased. Is that possible? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, not everybody who read the article clicked through, but those that did saw it's a consumer product. It was under $40. Yeah, they'll just hit the buy button. It's a no
yes.
brainer to them. They
Yeah.
bought into it, and they're just like, wow, our best paid landing page does like 3%, and I'm just like, well, this is a different thing because these people are locked and loaded and they're invested because that PR. That article is a signal of trust, and
Mhm.
people don't have the guards that they have when they see an ad. When they read something that was written by someone else, it really gives you that clout and currency, and it makes things so much easier. We work with a lot of startups that appear on Shark Tank. The producers recommend that they do a press release before their episode airs, and we get
Mhm.
recommended a lot. And a lot of them often do a base of PR before they cut on paid advertising, because they know that once they get a lot of pickup and the episode airs and they've got this base of media that people coming through will see these logos, remember reading about them in places like People Magazine, as well as seeing them online. And all of a sudden, a page that would convert at 3% might now convert at 9 or 12%. And so that's the value of PR. It makes everything else easier and gives you that amplification, that rapport and excitement. It elevates you in the same way that thought leadership does, and it's one of the most underestimated things and one of the most frustrating things for marketers who just want to see everything from percentages and things like that. And I'm just telling you that you're not going to get a tracking URL put in a press release that the media is going to respect. You're not going to usually get a link in the New York Times, so I had it done once. But often these articles get written without links to you, but yet everyone knows it does help you. Google has a patent for this called an implied link. So, when a major site like the New York Times or Wall Street Journal writes about you, your SEO improves without a link to your website, because contextually they know that this is about you. This is an authoritative site, and they give you that credit as if it was a link.
That high domain authority. That is it. The news sites have that. If it's a free press, it's a local African-American newspaper, they are a true and tried, trusted domain site by Google. If it's the Afro, which is in Baltimore, I had a client that was in the Afro, and that thing always is on like his page one, even though it's a newspaper. They didn't link back to his site, but his name is there. So he put his name in the Afro comes because it's that. And PR shortens the sales cycle because it builds that trust. And it shortens the sales cycle. So you can run a whole lot of ads on Facebook. Nothing wrong with Facebook ads. I like Facebook ads, but sometimes you can run Facebook ads and it's just copywritten. It's meant to sell. Whereas a story is telling you the story from the heart, from the standpoint of like why this is news and why this matters. So I'm gonna ask you this, Mickie. So how do you, because I know we do a lot of teaching, how do you convince a client not to sell, but to tell a story in a press release? And I always tell them, we're not trying to sell. This isn't an ad. Okay, they're not going to pick up an ad. We need to tell the story. So they have to give an example of, I had a client that won an award, a lot of awards actually. She won like 4 or 5 awards. So we run the press release and we talk about her award. That's fine. That's just an announcement. I said, but we need to tell more of your backstory. She didn't want to tell her backstory. She says, I don't want to talk about this rags to riches story. No, and it's just embarrassing. I'm like, oh my goodness. So how do you tell people that the news wants that story? That's the story. That's the scoop they want.
Right. So I find it frustrating, but it comes down to education and trust and getting them to see it. I tell people, what's the first thing that people do when they appear on Shark Tank? Do they start talking their numbers? No. They get vulnerable. They're like, I got laid off. My dad had just died. I remember we used to build this thing in the workshop and sell it in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or something. And I just wondered, could there be a business here? And it's like, all of a sudden we are like caring. We are so emotionally invested. We want them to succeed, and it just cuts through. The same thing with the media and press releases and PR. Journalists crave those stories. I get so many press releases. Probably the number one press release we get is a product or service launch. And it's usually, here's a product or service, here's a list of features. Sometimes they're even bulleted. And then here's a page to learn more or buy. And I tell them, look at this. When's the last article that's been a product launch or service launch that you've read in the publications you want to be in, where it's only about the product and a list of features? And they're like, well, I see it all the time. And then when I push them, they never find it. They bring me articles of a product launch and they're like, have you noticed this is a story arc? They are wanting to follow a story arc. Even the smallest articles, journalists want to follow a story arc because the story is the most primal thing. It's the thing we've been doing since we sat around fires, is sharing a story that moves and flows. And they're like, well, how do we solve this? And I said, it's so easy. I said, I assume this product or service just didn't come to the market without you testing it? And they're like, oh no, we've had several people test it. And I said, well, tell me an interesting one. And they're like, oh, this company was in its third year. They had lost money every year. And after using our product for 90 days, they're projected to have a profit for the first time at the end of this year. And I'm like, that is a story. That's something people can get behind. We can even nail it more with a publicly available data point, like saying in your industry, companies usually fail in the first 5 years at a 67% rate. And here's a company that could have been such a casualty, and this is their outcome, this turnaround. And then get a quote by them, not a quote by you, but them talking the things, because your quote is going to give you a little bit of cachet, but when someone else is saying something beautiful or brilliant about you, that's going to resonate even more. And all of a sudden, that's the ingredients for a journalist to create a story. And so many people write their press releases and PR out of like, I guess they're guilty. They're actually selfish. And they're writing it from like, what's in it for me? And I feel this is the best thing. And you have to sit back and say, reverse engineer your press release, thinking about a busy journalist of what could I do that would make this journalist feel this is irresistible and I want to share it with my audience.
Yes.
And I think once you figure that out and you creatively brainstorm through that, you'll be able to take your press release and turn it into something that has a 5 times, 10 times more likely chance of getting picked up than what you had previously.
That there's so much when people want their press release to be picked up. And I love print. That is printing online. We're reading. But then we have the clients that want to, at least I have the clients that want to be on Tamron Hall, Sherry Shepherd, Jennifer Hudson, J Hud. They want these TV things. Talk about the bridge, I guess you would say, between having a long form story, an article. The journalist writes, a print journalist. I won't say they're the real journalists, but the ones that don't have the glamour and they don't have to put on makeup in order to tell a story, right? So
Right.
Tell us about the bridge between the print and the TV exposure.
Right. So I think that TV does happen, but I generally tell my customers, don't go into it expecting it to happen. It's sort of organic and it does happen. And it's beautiful when it does. I've had people who go to Good Morning America and they're there in the morning and they get time devoted to them, and it's amazing.
But it started with the press release.
Yeah, it started with a press release. And I tell you, even the most amazing PR professionals, and they're, if they're tasked with your only job is to get you on TV or talk shows, it's a near impossible thing to accomplish. And it just shows that the expectations aren't properly aligned. I tell people, let's create a campaign of 6 to 8 meaningful press releases, and let's hope that happens for you. And I will personally create some pitches for some of these talk shows, knowing what I know and what hopefully will be irresistible to them. But I'm also telling you, it doesn't happen often, and you just have to be open to it and manifest it a little bit, but you got to have reasonable expectations. I've had people come to me and say, I'll pay you $5,000 if you get me in this, and this. And I'm like, there's PR firms out there that wouldn't touch that for $250,000, because nobody can guarantee that you're going to get X, Y, and Z, or else. It's just not possible. That being said, I get surprised. I get surprised at times at what does get picked up. I also get surprised at the stuff that I think is newsworthy, and I felt like we really hit it with our best foot forward, and it just sort of falls flat. But the one thing I find is when you do that across 6 to 8 releases, it never fails all of them. When you are firing all cylinders and you're doing 6 to 8 releases, you will have 2 or 3 of them that are going to be home runs. But a lot of people like to judge press releases with a single press release. And I tell people, if they call and that's their expectation, I'm just like, one press release isn't a magic bullet. I would just tell you, save your money and maybe go look at the next shiny object until you're ready to sort of devote yourself to a proper PR campaign.
I love that. That's one of the things I always admired about you, Mickie, is that you have always been real honest. You educate people on the process. You tell them it's a campaign. There is no one hit wonder that is going to go from zero to hero in an instant, even though we live in quote unquote the microwave era, right? People want that, but it does take a campaign. Just like someone who would campaign for so many months to run for a president, they're campaigning. So it's not going to be just at one time. So the press release, if you have a press release, you put it on eRelease. What other things do you suggest that they do with a release? So like, say for instance, maybe they take a piece of it, maybe part of it for the blog, maybe another piece and put it on Facebook. What other things? Maybe do a video with it. I mean, people can now upload stuff and they can read the press release too. I've seen that happen. It's like, wow, it's reading my press release. I forgot what service that was, Mickie, but I put it on, and I put the press release on something, and it read it and put it on RSS feed on a podcast. I can't think what and I was like, oh my God, this is getting crazy. So what can they do with releases? Because it's just like, it's one piece of content, but they can really
I mean, I think reaching out to your leads and include it. Social media is a natural thing to get out there. Newsletters, all of that is completely appropriate. Putting it on your website, it's full of keywords, and you're the author of it. So put that there as well. A busy journalist who is looking at your press release and saying, maybe there's something there, goes to your newsroom and learns more. They are doing research. You've made it easy for them. That is valuable. And I work with a lot of small businesses. And when I tell them we need to create a newsroom, their eyes glaze over and they get sad. And I'm like, do you have a blog? They said, yep. Create a category called newsroom. Put all your stuff in there. That will at least give you a single place that you can refer journalists to, and solves the problem. And just baby steps is start there. You can always develop a newsroom later when you're redoing your website, but just find something that works and just put it out there and take advantage of it.
That is really good. That is really good. I don't think a lot of speakers and authors have a newsroom on their website. I'm trying to scour through. They have a media page, but not a newsroom that actually has the full form of all of their press releases. That is really, really key, because they'll show the media that they got, but the media that they got actually probably came because they sent out a press release. So you need to put the press release up there. So that is really, really good. Is there anything else as we wrap up that you want to give a final tip to someone if they're going to get press? Say that they are launching a book. How about that? They're launching a book. What are some of the things that you would suggest that they would do?
Have an elevator pitch. I think that's why startups and people from Shark Tank do well. I think it doesn't hurt you're on a national TV show, but I think that the one thing that startups in general do very well is they have an elevator pitch. They can say in one sentence what defines them completely. And, I want to know in one sentence what it is that your book is about that distinguishes it from all the other books on similar topics. And get that down and be able to communicate it easily. Journalists love nonfiction books, but you've got to be able to communicate what it is that makes this book special in the world. And also do a lot of networking, because one of the best things that you can do for a book is to get endorsements, quotes, not just blurbs. Maybe you've already got the blurbs, the book is done, but you can still get quotes from some amazing people out there. And when an amazing person is willing to lend one sentence that is just beautiful or amazing, it can make a world of difference in that press release for journalists to really pay attention to you. And again, this is a situation where where, like, sometimes PR professionals write for CEOs. If you develop a relationship with a famous author or speaker or someone that maybe you approach them and say, I have this book, I'm having, I'm trying to market it. Could I get just one quote that I could use from you for marketing? I kind of wrote this, and I was hoping that you could either use it or, make it your own words. And a lot of them will say, hey, I want to support you. What you wrote's great. Just go with it.
Exactly.
And
I tell that to
you've
them a lot.
made it so easy for them to say yes. And so, keep that in mind. And I think that all of those things can make it a lot easier to energize and get journalists interested in wanting to share your message and to get the PR out there about your book.
That is so true. That is so true. People don't realize that those blurbs is like, hey, I wrote this. You can make it your own. You can add your own words to it. But a lot of times they'll say, no, that sounds really good. And they'll go with it. That happens a lot. And I've worked with it. Yes, they don't realize it. That's why they hire publicists, because we make it easy for them. So they can go to eReleasesMickie.com and they'll find information there, but they'll also find education there as well. So you want to tell them a little bit about what they can get there?
Yeah, so I have templates and samples of press releases. I have some books as well. I also have a free masterclass where it's a hour-long video. It's not very long, but I go through and talk about the 3% of press releases that get picked up and the patterns that anybody can replicate. And if you build a campaign of 6 to 8 releases following that, you will have at least a couple of those press releases be home runs for you. And that's at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN. And again, it's completely free. It's just free education. But I tell you, it's amazing stuff. And it's the type of things that apply to anyone, whether you're a speaker or author or a startup. These are things that anyone can replicate and should be able to help you brainstorm newsworthy ideas for you.
That is good. It is really, really good. I looked on LinkedIn between us. We first contacted or reached out to each other in 2009. Oh, geez, like a long time. So you've been doing this for a while. So you are not new to this. You are true to this. So that is what I really, really love. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Get out there, get known. This has all been about education, because we know the best clients are the educated clients that are really, we want to empower them to know how to get press. And so go to eReleases.com, learn more about Mickie, use his service. I've used it in the past. I always recommend it to people. And it's one of those things where you want to make sure that at the very least that you do a campaign. There's not going to be one release that is going to be your end all be all, but do a campaign of them. And so he makes it so he does that. So thank you so much. I know we went a little bit longer, but I want to make sure we got it all in there. All righty. Thank you, Mickie. I'll talk to you later. God bless. All right. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast, brought to you by PamPerryPR.com, where you'll get insider tips on how to build your platform, pitch the media, and promote yourself with confidence. Head over to PamPerryPR.com and get the exclusive video training on the 7 must-have marketing materials you need before you pitch in order to be considered in media places or superstar stages. PamPerryPR.com, where you help you shine like a superstar.